Welcome to the Sens Spotlight podcast brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. Before we get started, bet the beauties with Betway and scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account and download the app. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Betway is an official sponsor of the Ottawa Senators. Also, for the YouTube gang out there, please like and subscribe to the show. That really helps us out. Before we get started, we will have Pierre McGuire on the show. It should be a really good chatter because the Senators have finally won a game. It's felt like a long time. It's been a week, so it should be a fun show. So hit it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Send Spotlight.
Here's Alfredson, bursts the speed, gets a shot away, score! Daniel Alfredson ends the game in overtime and sends the Ottawa Senators to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in franchise history.
The sickest Ottawa Senators podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And we are joined by Pierre McGuire. That was a pretty old school type of hockey game, tight checking, not much in there, but the Senators found a way to win. Just what were your initial thoughts on the win last night?
You know, Alex, when that started out in the first 29 seconds and Tyson Forrester scored, I'm going, this could be a problem. I was really concerned because I know Rick Tocchet really well. I had the privilege of coaching Rick in Pittsburgh and winning with him. And one of the things about Rick that I think a lot of people know is his intensity. And so when he senses that he's got somebody down, he's not going to let him back up. And when he was playing, this is how he was. So I'm watching that and I'm going, oh, Philadelphia looks good here. And then slowly but surely, Ottawa started to reel in. They started to take control of the neutral zone. I don't think that was a reflection, by the way, on Linus Ullmark at all, the Forrester goal. That's a tough initial shot, and it's got a lot of heat on it, and there's not a lot of resistance, and he just wasn't ready for it. But I don't think that's an example of how he played last night. I thought he played really well. But then they took over the neutral zone both offensively and defensively. And the thing that leads to the Amadio goal, and I don't know how much play it got because I was watching so many games, but I'm obviously watching that too. Jake Sanderson's composure with the puck in the neutral zone, moving it from partner to partner, chip it, chase it, and then a really nice play by Claude Giroux. And again, I don't know how much play that got because I don't listen when I'm watching four games at a time. And then Giroux right over to Amadio, and there's no resistance at all from Philadelphia. And Amadio with a really good shot, like an excellent shot in that situation against Danny Vladar. I was really impressed. And then they just took the game over. And the thing that is a telltale sign, I don't know if you agree with me, you were in the building, but if you hold a team to 7 shots in a 1-goal game in the third period, you're playing to your game plan and to your identity. You had to make Travis happy.
Oh, I think this was the epitome of a Travis Green type of game for the Ottawa Senators. Like, that's what he wants to see from his team. It's not a lot of space, very disruptive in the neutral zone, very much limiting the opponent to the outside. There was a couple times where they were a bit sloppy, and the Flyers could have tied the game in the third period. But I think, as you mentioned, overall, they were pretty good at limiting them to the outside. I think this was a really good game to build off for the team. I think the last 2 games, that's the way they need to play with or without Tkachuk. But I think that's the way they have to play, especially with Tkachuk, is just get like 2-2 in the third, like not high, not a lot of up and down the ice. We're just keeping it contained, a tight checking game, and that's how you accumulate points, right? If you play 5, if you're up and down the ice going trading chances, guess what? You're going to get burned enough, and then you're going to find ways not to pick up points. You're going to lose a couple games.
They also got supplemental offense from guys they're not used to getting offense from, like Amadio, Lixell. You know, you win the game 2-1, and Stützle's not on the board. Batherson's not on the board. Pinto's not on the board. Chabot's not on the board. Sanderson, you know what I'm saying? So Giroux gets an assist, but he's not on the board with a goal. So you win that game 2-1 with depth scoring, which is really important. I think really important. And you know what? Lars Eller, what a pass!
Oh,
unreal. It's a beautiful play. Here's the only downside to last night, and it concerns me a bit. Not a ton, but a bit. They were out-faced off 56% to 44% on home ice. When you don't have a lot of star power, that's a problem. They're going to have to and Travis was really good on faceoffs. They're going to have to try to make sure that doesn't happen in a lot of the games coming up, starting with Washington.
I don't have the stat in front of me, but I know leading up to the game, they were one of the best face-off teams in the league. And Tim Stutz has been unreal, which is interesting because he's always been a, in the 40s type of face-off guy. Heading into last night, he was in the 70s, which isn't sustainable. But I think that's a great point, right? When you don't have the star power, you need to start off with possession, right? And I think the Lars Eller, it was interesting. Claude Giroux, someone asked him after the game, do you think Lars Eller saw the pass to Lixell, the between the legs pass that put it on Lixell's tape for the tap in goal? And he's like, I think he got lucky. And then Eller after the game said, no, I saw Lixell. That was by design. That wasn't a lucky play. But I think Eller's been one of their most he's such a consistent guy. You always know what you're going to get from him. I think he's been Ottawa's maybe 5 or 6 just best players in terms of consistency, bringing it shift in and shift out, and he's been a really good veteran add from Steve Staios. So I think if that line with Lixell can kind of keep growing, I think they were good. I thought the Greg Cousins, Nick in this case, and Perron, they've been really good. I don't know how much offense they're going to generate, but where do you see this team hitting goals moving forward with Tkachuk out?
It's going to be a lot like what you saw last night. That's kind of how it has to be. You saw when they tried to get into a shootout with the Islanders in particular last Saturday, that didn't work out very well. Like, that's kind of not what they need to do. So I think it's going to have to be a lot of chip chase and check hockey, a lot of pucks getting deep, not a lot of turnovers, not taking a lot of penalties. One thing that I was happy about last night, more aggressive on the penalty kill. More aggressive,
so much better.
Take away time. And so they're making subtle adjustments. They're not saying they're giving up the plan, but they're more aggressive, less passive resistance and more aggressive play. And I think that helped them last night.
Oh, I'm completely 100% in agreement with you, Pierre. Just seeing Pinto and Greg be like whippersnappers, like jumping up to the point and just putting pressure on Philadelphia. And I saw that a little bit in the Edmonton game. I know they got burned by the Greg losing McDavid, but I thought their PK was actually pretty good for the most part. And they lost the draw on the Wallman goal, but it wasn't. I felt overall, it didn't feel like they were just going to get broken down and tap in City, which it felt like to begin the season. So I think that's a promising sign and something they need to do with Tkachuk out.
Yeah, and again, they got to get to 2 to 3 first. They can't be playing from behind. They just don't have that. I know they fell behind last night. I don't have Philadelphia as a playoff team right now, and I don't know if you do or not, Alex, but I don't have them as a playoff team. So they got away with one last night on home ice. You're going into a playoff environment in Washington. Washington, it's the dirt, because you're around it. There's always been this little dirty little secret in the league with different rivalries. Ottawa, Washington's one of those. There's a little bit of jam in that one. So Washington on home ice, they're going to want to do some damage. Lars Eller going back to a place where he won the Stanley Cup. I think that's pretty neat. I was watching them last night. I was thinking back to their Stanley Cup in 2018. I was thinking about, Nicky Backstrom, Kuznetsov, Lars Eller, and Jay Beagle. Like, if you look at their 4 centermen, they were really structured and talented. And they had some really good weapons, but their center ice play is what determined how they played the game. I know they had Ovechkin. I know they had Tommy. Well, like, they had all these other guys, but really what structured that team was their center ice play. And Lars was a big part of it. So I think that's kind of cool for him to be going back to a place where he won the cup.
He had a wry smile. Someone asked him about that. He's like, are you a bit excited? And you could tell he wanted to say something, but he almost like stopped himself from saying, yeah, I really want to score like a hat trick against his former team. Like, he was good about it. Like, he didn't say anything out of the ordinary, but you could see that it meant something to him. And, when he said it's just another game, he didn't really mean it. It's one of those type of quotes. So I think that will be cool for him. And I think last year, if you look at the matchups, all the games went to overtime. Some were 1-0, a bunch were like high flying 4-3, 5-4 games. So I think we should be in for a good game against for the Senators against Washington. I think it's a big game because if you look at their schedule, they play Boston, Chicago, the Flames, and then Montreal. But those next 3 games, if you play well, you can win all 3 games. Although Chicago's playing well right now.
Better.
If you can get a win or even a point in Washington, kind of like what we talked about a couple weeks ago, it's like you need to get 6 out of 8. I don't know if I'm at that point with this team, but if they can get a win or even a point in Washington, that can really spearhead them forward in the week where they can maybe start picking up some points, getting above 500 and kind of trying to survive and accumulate points without Kachuk.
I like that theory. And the other part that and I know people don't want to look that far ahead, but after you play Washington, Boston, Chicago, Calgary, then you're at Montreal, then you have 4 days off. That's good, because then if you look at the rest of the schedule, it's every other day. So this is a team, if they could get on a roll here, that 4 days off is going to be like 8 days, if you know what I mean, because they're going to be able to really relax, get some quality practice time in before they just play every other day and don't get quality practices. And so usually when you're in that type of situation as a coach, you're like saying, okay, get me some enthusiasm, get me some wins, get me some points. You're not telling the players that, you're saying it internally, because then I know when I have the players for that 4 day period, I've got a captive audience. They believe in the plan because the plan is producing points. And so that's one of those things you want to try to go into that break with a little bit of momentum.
What do you think of this team's just, before the season, it was all about trying to score more. And I felt like they kind of cheated the game. They got sloppy. They were going for 2-minute goals. But there's this weird thing when you look at the stats. I'm a stats guy, where they outshoot the opponents most games. The expected goals, like they seem to create a lot. But then when you look under the hood, they're always low in terms of high danger chances. I was looking at the stats just before to prepare the show. They're like 8 in expected goals, 4th in shot share, but they're 19th or 18th in high danger chances, like the share. So the opponents typically get more high danger chances than the Senators do. What do you think of that ability where the Senators hold the play, but it seems more perimeter and they don't get those high danger chances?
And that's why Brady Kachuk being out of the lineup. I would like to see that stat with Brady in the lineup.
It improves.
I bet it improves pretty significantly. Sure. So I used to call it SAP, slot area presence. And if you don't have a lot of SAP, you're not going to be able to produce those high quality danger chances because everything's to the perimeter. All the other team wants you to do is take a shot from the outside. They trust their goalie and they make sure there's no second or third chance. So that eliminates a lot of those high danger chances. But when Brady's there, there's a street fight in the slot every single time he's on these, or he controls the boards to create more opportunities, second and third chances in the offensive zone. So that's one of the reasons why I talk so much about the importance of faceoffs. I agree with you. Their stats have been pretty good on that, but last night they weren't. And I think that speaks to why it was a 2-1 game and not a 3-1 or a 4-1 game. And so the Brady factor is huge. And here, I hate to say this guy's name all the time because I feel terrible because I'm not picking on – they didn't hire Zetterlund to be a checker. And him playing less than 10 minutes a game isn't getting it done. And so he's got to – there's a guy they need for offense, and there's just nothing there right now. There's nothing there.
There's nothing. It's interesting. I don't know if I don't want to be a broken record, but just thinking about all the moves the Senators have made, that's the one where you're like, man. I mean, they gave up a 2nd-round pick, which is a significant asset. Ostapchuk's a good player. I don't know if he would have made a lot of sense on this team. Just they have so many centers. But yeah, it's not looking good. And I was looking at the comments, and people took a lot of flack for me saying I would trade Dylan Cousins for Nazem Kadri. So I'm going to revisit this with you, Pierre, because I thought might as well. And if you look at the Stützle, Cousins, Batherson line, they haven't been that good.
There was one game, the one game where they got put together in the second period. I think it was against the Islanders, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
They took that game over. That's their one shining moment where they dominated. And the coaching staff's to be commended on that. They took advantage of home ice. They took advantage of the last change, and he saw he needed something, put them together, moved Timmy to the wing, and it took off. They did well. Hasn't been the same since, though.
No. And
hasn't been the same since.
And I find with Cousins, there was one play I think it was the second period, and it seems like a recurring theme where he has it. If he makes a simple play, he's trying to exit the zone and tries to dangle around, gets stripped, and immediately there's a great chance for the other team and against the Flyers. And that happened multiple times in the past couple games, and Ottawa's been burned. And there's a bit of that hockey sense with Cousins that I just feel like he doesn't get. I don't know. He just defensively, it's not there. He has all the skill in the world. He has an unreal shot. He's a great skater, good puck movement. But I know, just being around the organization, they believe that you bring Cousins in, he's out of Buffalo, he's going to learn how to play defense, and he's going to kind of learn that side of the game. And it's only been a playoff, 20 games last year, 8 this year. I don't see that. I see the same type of player that has talent, but is a liability in his own end, and that's a problem.
There's some maturing that has to go on there. I would agree with that. I don't think that you're off base on that. And with Timmy, you could see Timmy struggling without Brady. I mean,
Yeah.
we saw this for a while now, and Timmy's going to have to look in the mirror and say, okay, I got to elevate. It's go time. It's a little like Dylan Larkin. You look at the first game in Detroit, Dylan Larkin, they lose, the coach calls him out, and Dylan takes it personal in a good way, not a bad way. Then they go on that run. Now they're back to where they were opening night. They can't get a win. Things are going sideways. And Dylan's going to have to be the guy that's going to have to step up and deliver, especially if Kane's not in the lineup. Well, Timmy's going to kind of be the same as Dylan Larkin. He has to. And if he can do it, it's great. It's kind of like I can tell you right now, it's what Bo Horvat's doing down with the New York Islanders. There's certain guys that just have to elevate at key times, and Timmy's got to be that guy for Ottawa. I know we're going to focus on Cousins. I don't think Cousins has that in his game. Timmy does.
Yeah.
Timmy does. I don't think Dylan does.
I heard this comparison to Tim Stützle, and I want to kind of flesh it out with you, because someone said he's kind of like Matt Barzal, where it's very like all the skill in the world, but very much a perimeter player that it's almost a little bit of empty calories. I don't want to say that this guy has had a 90-point season. He was almost a point per game last year. Like, he's obviously an unbelievable hockey player, but there is a worry for me watching him the past couple of years where he has all the dazzle, he has the unbelievable skating, but just getting line drive, shooting the puck, creating goals isn't as easy for him and as second nature for him as other guys in the league. And I worry about that a little bit with Tim Stützle.
Well, again, without Brady, it's a different equation for
Sure, for sure.
It is. And I hate to overhype Brady, but I will. I'll overhype him because I was part of the group that signed him to this extension. And you look at it now, that it's an amazing bargain. But here's those players, guys like Timmy, sometimes, not always, Alex, but sometimes they just need a little more. So Timmy's 23, just turned 23.
Yeah, he's super young.
He's really young. In an NHL lifestyle for him, being a first-round pick, third overall, he's a young guy still. And he's been on some marginal teams. They're just starting to warm up now. I still think there's a learning curve for him to go through. Yeah. And so I'm more excited about his future and the potential there, because he's shown. And you made a great point. He's been a 90-point guy, and last year he was almost a point-a-game player. And there were portions of last year's season where the team wasn't great. There were other portions when the team was really good, and he was a big part of it. So I think it's a little early to worry about Timmy. I'm a little more worried about Dylan Cousins. And it's to what you said before. You said something that was really good before. There's a I don't know if he understands how to manage the game or the risk of the game. Mm-hmm. And he's going to have to get that. He's going to have to get it sooner rather than later.
Have you ever seen a player maybe struggle at that? Not just like at 21, but like he's almost 25, like at 25, and then by 28, 29, really figured it out.
Yeah, I had a guy, and it's interesting you would ask me that question, because I think about this guy a lot. I loved coaching him. Andrew Castle's a former Ottawa 67 early draft pick of Montreal, and he just wasn't going to make the Canadiens, and that's how Hartford got him. Andrew was so good. When I had him for 2 years, he played unbelievably well for me. I loved coaching him, and he was a guy that learned because he was receptive to coaching. And he like 1 year, I think he was an 86 or 87 point player. You'd have to look at it. 92, 93 season, I think he had over 80 points. And the next year I was playing him against everybody's top player. And that wasn't fair of me to do that to him because I didn't have any other options at that time. And he played, not only did he play great defensively, but he played great offensively too. And Jeff Sanderson, Jake Stad, and Pat Verbeek were his line mates. We called it the CVS line. And Cass was a big part of it. Andrew was a huge part of it. And so it's to your point. Have I ever seen a guy like start out a little slow and then, Andrew Castles would be a good example of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I still like he's still a really talented player. I think that's why on the power play you really see him show. I think he has 4 points so far on the power play. Like
Right.
that's it's him and Batherson are very similar in that sense where at 5-on-5 they haven't really shown a lot to drive play, to make the right decisions, to be defensively sound. Like Dylan Cousins is a -8 right now. But when you give them time and space to create, they're really good players. Both Batherson will scores a ton on the power play. Same with Cousins. He has an unbelievable shot. It just, again, still feel Dylan Cousins ultimately is a much better right winger than he is center. And that's why when we talked about Nazem Kadri, maybe you don't trade him for Dylan Cousins. Maybe you trade him for Zetterlund, maybe Ridley Gregg, who I love. I think he had an unbelievable game last night. Ridley Gregg blocked 4 shots,
We talked about it the other day. He needs to play more. Remember we talked about it? He needs to play more.
For sure. But I think that's like you hear all the rumblings that Staios is aggressive, trying to add more talent. I think he recognizes, hey, like Dylan Cousins is a great player. Fabian Zetterlund not working out right now isn't the solution in the top 6. We need a little bit more oomph. And is that Nazem Kadri? Is that, maybe Jared McCann, although Seattle's playing well? Whoever it is, he knows this team needs another jolt of talent. And I think you can see that, especially without Tkachuk, where there's clear flaws in this team. At the same time, they're pretty good too. Like they could easily be 5-2-1 right now if their PK was better. They had a couple saves. Like they're not a bad team by no means. They're a very good team.
I think they're a playoff team. I don't think they're Stanley Cup ready yet, but they're a playoff team. And that's a positive. I want to throw out a bouquet because they haven't played great as a tandem, but I thought Shabbat and Jensen last night were very good. And I thought Tommy was their best defenseman last night. I like the patience of Jake in his game last night, but Tommy brought an A game last night. And we haven't seen a lot of those, but I thought he and Jensen were really reliable last night.
They're good. Jensen still has a couple. He's just forcing plays in his own end, and he gets burned a couple times. But I agree that pairing looked much more solidified last night. It didn't feel as run and gun and just running around in their own end that it felt like at the beginning of the season. And the stats bear up. Like it was one of their best kind of analytics.
There you go.
Nights, so it kind of matches the eye test. Just to plug your show. So yeah, I think that's a good sign for the Senators. I thought Clevin Manpal, they've been Ottawa's, I think, that pairing's been their best two in the past 2 games. I think they're really big, mean, can skate, just smart in their own end.
I agree with that too. At some point, if Zetterlund, this is just a thought, if Zetterlund doesn't get going here, I wonder if Travis doesn't go 11-7 and get Spence in. Not so much because Spence deserves to be in, but Spence can do something that a lot of those guys can't. Talking about Clevin and Mantampolo in particular, produce points. So I know Tampa did it a lot on the top. When they were on top of the mountain, Tampa usually went 11-7. And one of the reasons why they did that, he knew he could play his star players more, and they wanted to be out there because of the rhythm that it generated. And because now the way the schedule's set up and you get that 4-day break, I'm wondering if at some point in the next 2 games, you then say, you know what, I'm going to just throw sugar to my top guys. And I want them out there every other shift or every shift and a half or 2 shifts. I'm just thinking because
that's interesting.
At some point, Spence going to have to play.
I agree. And I think he's definitely like, I think that's the thing, we see fans calling like the hashtag free Spence. And I do think he's played. I don't think he's deserved to be a healthy scratch, 4 or 5 times so far this season. I think he's played, he had the gaff against the Islanders, but I thought he played really well outside of that play, right? And as you said, he shouldn't have been on the ice at that moment.
No, I'm blaming the coach on that. I told you this, I think at the beginning when we started doing this, between 10 and 20 points a year, a coaching decision has to be made in a positive way to affect the outcome of a game. And if you do that, you're going to win a lot. You're going to be in the playoffs. But that game in particular against the Islanders, that's a bad decision by the coaching staff. And I don't know if it was Nolan Baumgartner did it or Travis that did it, but somebody on the staff did it, or the staff did it as a staff. But that's a foible. that can't happen because Andersley, if you watch any of the Islanders games, at the end of games, Andersley's on the ice because he's unbelievably strong. He can clear the crease. He gets pucks out. He doesn't get outworked on the boards. He's going to win a ton of battles, one-on-ones. You can't have an undersized guy on the ice against him. You can't. Like, I watch all their games. And the Islanders, like at the end of every game or most periods, Andersley's on the ice. That's just
Exactly. The one thing, shout out to Kaz Shuji on Twitter. He looked at the stats for speed, and the Senators were 26th. And that's something that I've noticed, as good as the Perron Cousins Greg line, that must be one of the slowest lines in the league, right?
Yeah.
And that's another part, that Spence brings, of course. I mean, it's a bit different as a defenseman.
Yeah.
But that's another area. Like, what are your thoughts on they always say speed kills in the NHL. How important is it in the NHL, and how, much of a kind of, I would say, just not a disappointment, but something that the Senators can't really grow from when you can't make guys faster during the season?
No, it's really important if you don't have a lot of speed is to move the puck quickly and stretch the zones. Now, back in the day when the red line was still in, it was harder to do that. Now you can stretch zones and guys can come through and it's a little easier, but it's a really important stat to pay attention to. I'd like to see where the Florida Panthers were last year, and I'd like to see where the Toronto Maple Leafs are this year. I think Florida was probably closer to the bottom part of the team speed, but where they make it up, and this is what you can do, is they turn every game into a street fight. They lure you into playing their style. And so that's something that you, as a smart coaching staff, and Paul Maurice and the staff, they got a whack of experience. That's what they're really good at. Toronto this year is off to a real, I think, pedestrian and maybe below pedestrian start. They look slow. Everything looks slow. Their skating looks slow. Their puck movement looks slow. Their forecheck looks slow. Their power play looks terribly slow. They just look slow. So I think there's some merit to what you're saying there. And if you do have a slow team, that's when your coaching decisions have to change in terms of style.
And I think the thing that the Senators have that I think their forward group's slow, but their D-core isn't, especially with Sanderson and Shabbat.
Yeah.
Right, they can be
when Jensen's healthy, Jensen can wheel too, and Jordan Spence
Spence too, right? So the back end is.
I can tell you, I watched a lot of Tyler's games when he was a kid before he even got to Dakota, and saw him a ton at Dakota. He's a way better skater than what people think. Tyler Cleven's a very good skater for a man his size. He really is.
No, and that with the size and the ability to absolutely deck and crunch guys is kind of, I think Travis Green, like if you put him on, and like if you made him like think about a third pairing defenseman in a lab, it would be Tyler Clevin. I think that's he's just the prototype of that. The one thing you said earlier that I'm curious, you mentioned just being part of the staff in Ottawa when Tkachuk signed his long contract. Do you have any like story or anything from that experience that you could maybe share?
Peter McTavish deserves a lot of credit. He was the assistant GM at the time, and we went. The general manager Peter and I drove to Toronto in the summer to Newport Sports Management. We sat in a boardroom, and we really made no progress, like none. And then there were a lot of phone calls back to back, and they were conference calls where they had 3 guys on the call, we had 3 guys on the call. And then Peter, to his credit, came up with a really good plan. He goes, let's meet him halfway. I'm like, what do you mean? Says, let's meet him halfway. Let's have them drive from Mississauga to Belleville, and we'll drive from Ottawa to Belleville, and we'll meet at the Belleville rink in our offices there. Good idea. And they liked it too. So we got there and push came to shove, and there was bad discussion, good discussion. And at one point, somebody in the meeting said, well, he can take his talent to Europe. So me being a smarty pants, I said, really? Which team does he want to go to? I'll call them right now. And then you're going to have to explain to his father why he's playing in Europe and not playing in the NHL, because you're the ones that asked for that. So you'll have to explain that. And that kind of put a damper on things. And we did that night. We got a deal done, and I give all the credit in the world to Peter for coming up with that idea, because everybody kind of was in a foreign environment, even though it was the Belleville Senators area. It was really a really smart idea by Peter, and I think that paid huge benefits for the team and for the negotiation.
When contract was signed, sealed, delivered, what were your thoughts on it? Because it has aged immensely well over time.
Well, the only thing they kept saying was that Brady was a unicorn, and he was, except the comparable at the time was Svechnikov in Carolina. And Svechnikov was running roughshod over people and scoring a whack of goals. And Brady hadn't gotten to that level yet, scoring wise. Now, obviously, he has. And Svechnikov's contract has aged pretty well too. But if you were to say, who would you trade Brady for Svechnikov? Yeah. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. Yeah. So they had their comparables. We had our comparables. And I thought the negotiation at the end, because of what Peter proposed, McTavish, it really worked out well. Really worked out.
It definitely worked out for the Senators, so I'll give you a little bit of credit there, Pierre, for keeping
like I said,
part of it.
McTavish is the one that came up with that idea. I thought it was a really good idea.
No, have you ever seen anything like that before?
Like I did over the course of my career back in the day. You really didn't meet guys, and everything was kind of done by fax. We didn't have this ability to communicate via phones or computers. So everything was done by fax and sometimes telephone. And you didn't really meet face-to-face too often. If you did, it was usually in a hotel bar or in a restaurant. You know what I mean? That's how it was. I'm just trying to think out of the top of my head. Their arbitration back when I was more involved in it was maybe a little more vicious.
Spicy,
spicy is a better word. So I'll give you an example. This year, I don't know, I think there were like 11 or 12 people that applied for arbitration. I could be wrong. It might be a little bit more. Not one of those ARB cases ever went to the judge. They all got settled on the courthouse steps. Isn't that amazing how that happened?
Yeah.
By the way, the other thing too, and you'll appreciate this, Alex, this is for the fans out there. Everybody talked about how last summer, because of what St. Louis had done to Edmonton, that last summer was going to be the summer of the offer sheet, because especially with what was going on in Anaheim. There was zero. There was zero offer sheet, zero. And I'm not surprised. The business of hockey is changing almost on a daily basis now. It really is.
I also think the rising cap, right? Teams were so tight to the cap for so long that offer sheeting made a lot of sense. I don't know why no one did it before the Blues did, but at the same time, now it's going up like 5, 6, 7 million. It seems like every year. So you have a little bit more wiggle room to not be offer sheeted. And I think also, as you said, from my experience, just hearing things, you go to arbitration, it's hard to maintain a good relationship with that player if you want to keep them long term.
The number one, I can tell you, I sat in one arbitration. It was at the Sheraton Hotel in Montreal a long time ago. I was asked to testify. I felt so bad being in that room because the player that was there, he was sitting in the room. We were playing that night in Montreal, by the way. They were asking me questions, and I was like, I don't want to hurt this guy's feelings. Like, he's one of our players. He's an important guy on our team. It was hard. It was really
Why didn't
hard.
you have an arbitration case during the season?
Back then,
was that how it worked?
That's how it used to work back in the day.
That's insane. I did not know that. That it's like, you suck. We're gonna give you $1 million, but please play well on our second line, right? It's like,
and I still have a great relationship with that player now. And he even said to me, he goes, "You were having a hard time." I said, "Yeah, I had a hard time." One time, I was like, "I don't want to answer this question. Like, it's not fair." You feel bad. Like, you get in the ditch with these guys, and you want to survive. You want to win with them. You want to do whatever it takes to win with them. And I know that people love to be passionate. That's one of the beauties of hockey. But these guys are human beings, man. Their feelings hurt. They're not machines. They hear stuff, and it hurts. It really does.
That's the one thing, just being in the media, and I don't think I have that much clout or whatever you want to say, like kind of like that big of a voice. But it's interesting, you hear things come around about what you said, what you wrote, and you're like, these are multimillionaires who, like, Why do they care what Alex Adams or Pierre McGuire says? And then you realize they do, because guess what? If you heard that someone said that you sucked or didn't play well or et cetera, even if you don't really care about them, it'll still kind of hurt, right? Because they are human beings at the end of the day. So it's this weird, I mean, I get flack from fans here and there, not too much. Sens fans are great, but sometimes, and I just try to laugh it off. But I can see how it's hard to. You need to have a very.
You know what becomes really hard? I'll tell you. At the beginning of my career, I didn't pay, and we didn't really have it, but I didn't pay attention no matter what, one way or the other. But once you start having children and you have a marriage, and the children hear about it, and I'm talking about players or broadcasters or coaches or whomever, that's when it hurts you the most. You got to that reason, you got to that level because you probably were physically and mentally pretty tough. And maybe you had a gift. But it's when your children start to hear it, or your wife starts to hear it, or your mother starts to hear it, or your dad starts to hear it, and you're starting like, oh man, I feel bad for them. You know, that's when it hurts the most. It really does. The rest of it's fine. Like if it's just you, you're good. Like it's okay. Take any shot you want. I mean, it's when your family gets involved when it really hurts.
Yeah, no. And there's a couple guys on the team that I feel are pretty good at that compared to maybe other teams, maybe in Southern Ontario. Is that too direct? I don't know. But I like if you think Brady Tkachuk cares if someone writes something negative about him, I'd be shocked. And same with like a Jake Sanderson, whoever. Shane Pinto's a very easygoing guy. Drake Batherson too, right? Like there's a lot of guys that I think I think that's been good about this team is that they're pretty even keel, and I don't think the bright lights and the negativity gets into the room too much, especially after last season. So hopefully only up from here and things can get.
Ottawa's a civilized market too. Ottawa's a good market. The fans care about the players there. The fans are proud of their community. Like I tell you a million times, I think Ottawa's the most underrated city in the NHL. And I also think Ottawa is one of the best places I've ever lived over the course of 37 years in the NHL. I loved living there. Loved it. Everything about it I liked.
I still think if you win, awesome. I mean, I think that's the case for most markets, I'll be honest, but especially in Ottawa, like you looked how they serenaded the team after they lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs. Like think about that. You lose to your arch rival and the fans because it's been so long and it was such a likable team. Guess what? They give you a standing ovation to end the season. Yeah. There's not a lot of markets that do that. I'll tell you that.
No.
Right. And so and the crowd was unbelievable. I just want the playoffs just to be in the moment of just hearing the roar and the ovation and just how just chills in the playoffs last year. It's unbelievable. So, and hearing the Marners leaving and the Matthews' balding chants from the fans was pretty. I give them credit there. That was pretty awesome too. So yeah, I could stop, and they were right about Marner. So give them credit; they were ahead of their time. So Pierre, I've kept you too long, so thank you so much for doing this.
I love doing this with you, my friend. I love it. We'll do Sunday, I guess. Sunday morning.
Sunday, in after hopefully a contentious, as you said, little rivalry between the Senators and Capitals. So Pierre, thanks so much for taking the time and doing this, and I can't wait to chat on Sunday.
Thanks, Alex.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Sens Spotlight on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.